Hello, everybody. It is 11:16 a.m. Central Time on Wednesday, July 26, 2017. And I've got an update for my U.S. viewers. We're going to go ahead and dive into some U.S. earthquakes, show you guys what's happening, specifically two spots I want to focus on. West coast of the United States going out to Hawaii, and Midwest United States. Let's start in the Midwest, since many of my viewers do live here. Oklahoma, Kansas, and Arkansas showing noteworthy earthquake activity in the past day and a half, specifically at the fracking operations, and the magnitudes going anywhere between 2.6 and 2.7, dropping down a little bit as we go to the east. And you might be wondering, where is this coming from? Where did these earthquakes suddenly show up from, considering it was somewhat quiet a few weeks ago? Well, these earthquakes came from the west-northwest. Yesterday, the 3.0 and 2.7, 2.9 activity going on up at Yellowstone and Montana has now pressed to the east-southeast and caused new 2.7 activity in the Midwest. Now, I would like to just quickly take the time to go look up a few of these earthquakes with you. We'll do it real time. The way you do it, you capture the earthquakes by looking them up on Earthquake 3D first. So, here's how you do it. Get the coordinates from the most recent earthquake. Well, hold on. There we go. Okay, get the coordinates from the most recent earthquake here. There we go. Stroud, Oklahoma. And then you capture the earthquake by looking it up on Google Earth. So we call it earthquake capturing because, well, at least that's what I call it when I'm kind of talking to friends. Because that's what it is. It's almost like trying to seek out a culprit of something. And look where we are. Look where we're zooming in on. Right across the street, literally right across the street, an old oil and frack well, gas well. They're most likely fracking at this one. It looks old enough. And also you can see the pump. You can see the storage tanks next to it. And also across the road right here is another pump or well. And it's right behind that set of trees a few hundred feet away. And there's probably other operations that are nearby. Here's a newer one. There we go. So if you start to wonder why the earthquakes are striking these locations, it's because they are vulnerable. They are perforations humans have created in the edge of the plate. Now, all the other locations that I were to show you over here in Oklahoma look exactly the same. You don't have to take my word for it. Feel free to go look them up yourself if you're curious about the earthquakes in the Midwest. Just wanted to show you a new swarming cluster has showed up as expected. We talked about this last night at 4 p.m. Yesterday at 4 p.m., we issued the warning and said Oklahoma at the Kansas border going down into central Oklahoma would see a new swarm equal to what was striking, just a few points less, up to the northwest. And that's exactly what's happened. Now, there's one single earthquake over here in Arkansas, and it's at the Missouri border. So technically, it's right there. Some people might say that's Missouri. The other might say it's Arkansas. It's within a few miles of the Missouri border. But we'll put the coordinates in. These come from the EMSC. We could get them from the USGS too, either or. EMSC will give us a little bit less of a refined point, maybe down to a few hundred meters, whereas the USGS will give it down to a few feet, I think. All right, so where are we? Here we are. Look, we're at Bull Shoals Lake. And I call BS on this because they said Bull Shoals Lake was filled and that it was causing earthquakes. Well, guys, Bull Shoals fills every year. And there's not earthquakes there every year, and it's not a record amount of filling either at Bull Shoals. So what else is going on in the counties nearby Bull Shoals? If there's something going on there, look what's going on one county to the south. Look at this. Look how much fracking they're doing here. Now, for every well that I have marked, I'll show you. Just so you know, it's not any exaggeration. It took hours and hours of doing this. This is many years ago when I marked these. So there's new pads that have been created since I marked them, and they go all over the place. And there's so many that I just got tired of doing place marks for them. See? So each one of these aren't farms field, guys. These are for oil and gas. There's another one right there. All right, so every little square pad that you see cleared out here, then it really starts to make more sense. And does it stop there? Well, the imagery date here is as of 2014. in the last 3 years, they've reopened it up for exploration. I wouldn't be surprised if there was some kind of exploratory wells or some kind of pumping operation that either was up here or is being put up here now, and that would be the cause of the earthquakes in this county. It's within one county, so that's close enough. And we're, again, in Arkansas, right at the Missouri border. So those earthquakes, fracking. Then we get over to the east and we get into the eastern Craton Edge earthquakes going from the New Madrid seismic zone over to the east coast. Now the second thing I want to talk about is west coast of the United States going out to Hawaii. A new little swarm is breaking out in Hawaii on the southeast flanks of the Big Island. Now to show you what's there, I'm going to grab the coordinates on this. We'll get them from the USGS and we'll quickly go put them in on Google Earth. Now, I've looked this location up before, so I don't think people are going to be shocked. Longtime viewers, you already know what's there. I'm just doing this to show new viewers. So, zooming all the way out into the Central Pacific on the flanks of Hawaii. Look where it takes us in. Again, look where the coordinates take us in. These are from the USGS. Loihi. Loihi is an undersea volcano out here off the southeast coast of the Big Island. And we started to see a swarm here. There was a 5.0 earthquake and a 4 that also struck here last month, I think. Was that a month ago? Now today, new swarm activity right on the seamount near the top of the crater, or at least on the side. Now, it's underneath. It's many kilometers down below, but it's definitely related to the volcano there, guys, okay? So now we also need to look at what's going on, again, on the west coast of the United States. So, west coast of the United States. Sorry if we got sounds going on around me, guys. I got 2 cats climbing on my desk. Back in the U.S. mainland, Southern California swarming out at Big Bear, going up to 3.0. I need to turn on the 0.0 and greater feed really quick. West Coast viewers, listen up, guys. This is significant. What's going on here? So, here we are. See it? See the stacks of earthquakes? The stacks of earthquakes let us know something's going on right now on the West Coast. An influx of pressure has reached all the way down to Southern California, Central California, Northern California. It's going along the coast on the fault zones, and it's reaching all the way over to the western edge of the Craton. Now, you got to remember, there was the 7.7 that happened up here just this past week. 7.7 up in the Aleutian Island chain at the tip of it. Since then, no new blast at Bogoslav, no new large earthquakes anywhere here, anywhere. But there's an increase in pressure overall. It's something pushing the whole United States to the Midwest right now. I mean, what more can I say? If the whole West and Midwest is being pushed, imagine the force involved that would take that. It would take that amount of force. Now, the 7.7 up at the Aleutian Island chain this past week, that's not pushing. It's the greater force that's pushing, that's causing the 7.7 and the push of the United States and Canada, which means it's a huge force. It's something much greater than the 7.7 that's causing all this that happened. But we're not looking for anything that big to hit unless the slow slip strikes. So what does this all mean? These big stacks of earthquakes here, down in Southern California, Central California, Northern California, Yellowstone, Montana, even going up into Washington State, all point towards one thing, that there's something off the coast currently pushing. Now, I want to go open up a copy of the real-time tremor map provided by the University of Washington State. We need to quickly consult and see if there's any new slow slip activity that's happened since last night. Oh, well, not only is there some serious slow slip activity, but look where it's occurring. Look at this. Last 24 hours, look, 25th into the 26th. Zoom in. Fairly obvious. West of Wairika, west of Weed, we have Mount Shasta right here, and then over to the west, we have this noteworthy swarm of tremors taking place. Now, 48 hours shows even more. And that it really shows you the proportion of what's moving versus what's not. The southern tip of this zone is moving. The northern tip is just onesie-twosies. So something going on in Northern California. A great amount of pressure is building in Northern California, and it's coming from here off the coast. The spot that's swarming up here with the tremors is in Northern California right here. So you have to add another swarm in Northern California, really, even though you can't see it here on Earthquake 3D, because they're so small. Each earthquake is so small, it's smaller than a microquake, smaller than a 0.0. Just the slight rumbling of the plate moving side by side, but it's a cluster. So if you're on the West Coast, you need to understand right now that the California, Nevada region absorbs pressure like a sponge until it can't absorb anymore. And once it can't absorb anymore, then we see the ultimate cause of it, the ultimate cause of all the pressure to begin with, release with a single earthquake off the coast. And it usually happens within days. You don't have to wait months for this to happen. So if we're talking days going into a week, I mean, how much longer do we have to wait? It's already been a week since we've seen any 4.0 activity out here off the coast. And it's going to go higher. It looks like it's going to go higher. And most likely it's going to be coming in from the west-northwest, which can kind of narrow down our area where we have to look. We have to look off the coast from the west-northwest, off the coast of the United States, going up to Vancouver Island. That's the zone to watch, but then we watch furthermore, we can reduce our locations down a little bit further if we trace all these earthquakes back up to the spot that looks like it's pushing. Well, if we're getting excitement up here, up at Montana, up at Yellowstone, we're getting excitement in Washington, and we're getting excitement all across California and Nevada. Well, both those locations point back up to here, further north, far further north than I've been stating in previous updates. So the new culprit, the new spot that appears to be pushing, appears to be coming from up here out of Alaska, and that would make sense because of the 7.7 from this past week that had to put pressure over to the east. It hasn't resulted in any follow-up activity yet, and no new blasts at Bogoslov either, which means that that is likely the cause, the pressure coming from the 7.7. Now, is it going to cause another 7.7? I don't think so. It's been over a week. It's pushing around maybe 3,000 miles, and there are earthquakes in between in the 2 and 3.0 range that could be relieving some of the pressure off that. But it would have to be a lot more than this to relieve a 7.7. So where is it going? I think it's building. That's what I think is happening right now. So if you're on the West Coast, understand that's what's up. Now, all the way over here on the East Coast, look what we have here. Right at the Maine, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia border, another 1.6. Well, guys, let's just go back a day on the 0.0s and greater and talk about the other earthquakes that struck, because New Hampshire was hit by a 1.6 to 1.7. The other, here, there it is, 1.7 in New Hampshire, now a 1.6, losing a 0.1 as it goes up to the east-northeast. Look at that, 13 kilometers deep. So it's not man-made, it's not caused by a mining collapse or something. It's a 1.6 following a 1.7 the day before. And go back a few more days and there's a 1.6 here. So really it went 1.6, 1.7, 1.6. So you only got ones. But I think it's pretty obvious. Look at the color coding on this. Dark red, of course, equals older, and pink equals, and white equals younger. So the dark red earthquakes happened this past week over on the West Coast, and then pushed over to the East Coast, and it only took 7 days for all that to happen. I would like to point out, we named New Hampshire, we named Maine, and we named New Brunswick this week for activity. And there it is. All three. Check all three locations off the list. I suppose the only good news for you on the East Coast is that there's loss of pressure that goes across the plate. So a 4 on the West Coast can cause a 3 in the Midwest, that cause a 2 on the Southeast Coast, to cause a 1 up to the east. 4s, 3s, 2s, 1s. So loss of pressure across the plate. But that sometimes, if the force is great enough, guys, like back in 2011 when the East Coast got hit by the 5.9, you may remember. Do you remember this? We issued a forecast for it. We talked about this it was 7 years ago. Okay, when we were looking at Virginia, Virginia got hit by a 5.9 earthquake. It shook up the whole East Coast back in 2011, caused damage to the Washington Monument. People on the East Coast freaked out. It was just basically a 6.0 earthquake. Well, what nobody noticed, except for me, I guess, the only person online who reported on it, was that 12 hours before, there was a near 5.9 or a 5.9. It started out at 5.9. Right down here in southern Colorado at the New Mexico border, at the fracking operations at Trinidad. They downgraded it to 5.4, but it knocked facades off houses. It caused damage, okay, this earthquake out here that happened. And it was 12 hours before. So first, a 5.9 here in Colorado at the fracking ops, then a 5.9 on the East Coast. So when the pressure is great enough, it maintains momentum. In this case, this week, it was pretty weak. I mean, it was 4s, 3s, and 2s going down to 1s up the East Coast. I mean, I guess that's good. That's what you'd want to see. You want to see this press across the plate in a few days to a week's time. And that's the natural progression of things. It apparently has always happened this way. Geologists somehow missed this. And I think the reason they missed it is because they had already declared something else. In other words, they would never look for it even if it was shown to them, because they had already made declaratory statements that were incorrect about which way pressure flows and transfers. How could they have known? They never showed anybody. Where's your evidence? Show me which way the pressure flows and transfers with the earthquakes if it goes the opposite way. And they can't, because here it is. The color coding tells us the date range on this, so it's undeniable. The most recent earthquakes showing up again in white. So the most recent earthquakes in white, result of yesterday's pink earthquakes. Yesterday's pink earthquakes, the result of the previous day's red earthquakes. The previous day's red earthquakes go back even further, and they were caused by the deep earthquakes that spread around the plate. So you can trace it back and trace it back and trace it back. And it happens on a semi-daily and weekly basis, for the most part, on every continent on the planet. There's only a few exceptions. So, word up to my people. I'm going to save this as a video for my U.S. viewers. Have a plan and be prepared. Come on, have a plan and be prepared. At this point, with the slow slip happening on the West Coast, and it's picking up in California, and California and Nevada are kind of absorbing this all like a sponge. It's pushing to the Midwest right now. We have no large earthquakes off the coast. It needs to be filled in with a large earthquake. Either that or there was a quake and they didn't report it to us, which is possible if a large earthquake struck out here. Total cabal involved here, guys. Total controlling of information, gatekeeping of information, as we call it. And, yeah, they do hide earthquakes and not report earthquakes. We've caught it a bunch of times. And why? Oh, well, political reasons usually, or professional reasons. Very seldomly is it just a mistake. All right. That's all I've got for you. I'll be back. Much love. Peace out.